What's going on YouTube? My name is Eric Sun and I'm a photographer based in Atlanta, Georgia. And in this video, I want to talk about something that some people may know, some people don't. I've actually run into quite a few people lately that said, oh, I didn't know that this was a thing until recently. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about it, make a short little video about it, and it is bracketing within your camera. And so the camera, obviously, we're going to be demonstrating it on today, is the 5D Mark IV and also the R5 that I'm using to film right now. And it's really simple. To basically what bracketing is that you take an overexposed photo, properly exposed photo, and an underexposed photo. So what that does is that it allows you to combine all those photos. It could be 3, it could be 5. I think I usually do 3, but I think you can go up to 5 in terms of the exposure levels and how different exposures each picture is that you take, so that you can combine them all in post. So you can retain highlights in the shadows, you can retain highlights in you can retain detail in the shadows, you can retain detail in the highlights, and it's just overall you just have more to work with instead of just taking a single exposure and then just trying to play with your levels then and like the highlight slider or the shadow slider and all that stuff. So this gives you a lot more ability, a lot more detail to work with in your images, especially if you have a very high contrast image. For example, I use HDR mostly for exterior shots in architecture, in interior design, and also for real estate. So depending on the time of day that we shoot, sometimes you can't really pick the time of day that you want to shoot. So just yesterday I shot, it was really sunny, it was clear blue skies. We shot at about 11 in the morning. And so you can already tell that with the sun hitting, clear skies, there's no cloud diffusion or anything. The shadows were very, very harsh. And so for me, especially for like a front balcony, or if there's like an overhead that's casting a lot of shadows on part of the house, HDR bracketing or shooting bracketing is super helpful, and then I'll just blend them in HDR in post in Lightroom. But what that does is that if I take the overexposed photo, that brightens up the shadows and I see a lot more detail in the shadows. A normal exposure or properly exposed photo is just, the overall base layer, I guess, that we would work with. And then the underexposed layer is what will retain the details in the highlights, like in the sky, or a lot of modern homes are painted white. They're white and black, black window frames, white brick or whatever. And so the home is going to be really, really blown out, and it's going to be really reflective if you don't properly expose. So what bracketing does, it allows you to retain details in all of those spectrums, the high, mids, and lows, so that you can combine them all in post. So that's the gist of it, and it's really simple. Instead of having to manually adjust your exposure and bring down your shutter or whatever to get a overexposed photo, properly exposed photo, and underexposed photo, what you can do is that you can actually set it up inside your camera for it to do it automatically if you just press the shutter button. And so without further ado, let's dive right into it. All right, so I just turned on my camera, and I have a screen recorder, so I'm recording everything that I'm doing right here. So as you can see, I have a lot of the settings kind of displayed on my screen. It takes up quite a bit of real estate, but I like to look at everything while I'm shooting and not having to switch between menus, add things, remove things, whatever. I just like everything where I want it, when I want it, quick glance, keep shooting. That's just the way I shoot. But to go to the bracketing, you just press menu on your camera, and this is how it is for most Canon cameras. If you don't shoot Canon, I'm sure you can do this on your camera. I just don't know where it is because I only have Canon cameras. So this is where it is. So you hit the menu button. This is the first folder, I guess, of the settings, and then you go to option 2, and then you see the exposure comp /AEB, and then that is highlighted. You click on that, and then this is where you go. So you can turn your shutter dial. So right now the red line in the middle is telling you how many photos that is taking and at what exposure level that is taking, depending on how the sensor reads the whatever the scene that your lens is looking at. And so you can bring it up like this. So now you can see, now I'm shooting 3 photos, and they're about 1 stop apart in terms of exposure. I can leave it at that, or I can keep going, and then now it's 2 stops for every exposure. Now it's 3 stops for every exposure. And so for this, I like to actually do it all the way to where it's 3 stops, where it takes 1 extremely bright at +3, 1 0 in the middle that's properly exposed, and then 1 that's -3, so I can retain all the details in it. Once you click that, hit OK, go back, and then if you, let me take off this lens cap. So I know it's really dark in here, and I know my settings aren't accurate, and 2-second timer, boom. Okay, so it just took 3. So now that we went through and we know how to create that setting within our cameras for auto bracketing, and you set the exposure levels and all that stuff, then let me give you an example of the shoot that I did yesterday of the exterior of a home, so that we can see and just edit and play with it and see the options we have to be able to create the images that we want. So as I'm pulling this up, you will be able to see that I have already created all of this. This was a shoot, I thought about this after the fact, but I wanted to still show these to you because I had to deliver this. You know, real estate photographers, or real estate agents, they expect photos next day and all that stuff. But so here is the front of the home that I wanted to capture. Of course, we need to capture the front of the home. The curb appeal of this house, I feel like, is pretty good. And as you can see, it's a pretty sunny day. Like, you can see the shadow in here. I mean, it's pretty, you can still see some things, but it's still fairly dark, especially, you know, like this side of the bushes. And yeah, so what I did is that I did a 3 bracket exposure, which is this one. This is the properly exposed one. This is the underexposed one, and this is the overexposed one. So you can see for the overexposed one, you can see, pull up in here, the details that are in here is a lot more crisp. You can see a lot more clear through here, and also on the leaves and the bushes right here, on the roof, all of that. Underexposed one, you know, there's just a lot more on the white paint on the front and in the sky. Whereas on this one, you can see that part of it is a little bright, is a little hot, but it's not too bad. I mean, this could have been a single exposure and it probably would have been fine. But I did do 3. So if we were to do, you know, just work with a single exposure, this is what I would do. So I have presets here that I kind of already have set up. And so this is what it will look like. And then guided, of course, you know, I never use auto really to align the pictures, because most of the time they don't really do a lot of times I realize that Adobe doesn't really do that great of a job with it. I mean, I'm always having to still make adjustments anyway, so I was like, if I'm going to be making adjustments anyway, I might as well just do this on my own, and just do it once and not having to kind of repeat it twice. So this is single exposure edited. I threw my preset on, you know, and this is the lens that I used, the Canon 16-35 2.8, and I was shooting at a 22 millimeters f8, 640 1/640 for shutter, and ISO 320. And this is just what it looks like. And then what you can do is that you can just create a mask around here too, and just take the shadows, you just kind of bring it up, and boom, that's pretty much your final image. I mean, you can maybe bring it down a little bit. Depending on the home and depending on the scene, sometimes I do like to bring the exposure down of the image overall, like this, and then I create a new mask, and then I actually select the subject, because sometimes Lightroom is pretty good in selecting out the home on it, and then I just brighten up the home so it stands out just a little bit more, and boom, that is your final image. That's a single exposure kind of deal right there. Now, if I wanted to do an HDR image, since I shot bracketed, I will select all 3 of these images. I'll go to photo merge, HDR merge preview. It's loading right here, and then boom, that is the preview of what it'll look like. I click on auto align, auto settings. I mean, the settings, it doesn't really matter too much because I'm just going to use my preset again. Deghost amount, I usually hit none, and then I click merge, and then give it a second. And just looking at this image, there's already a couple things that I'm probably gonna Photoshop out, like this sign right here, here, I don't know what that is, and also this soil, bags of soil and palette back here in the back. But boom, so this is the single exposure, and this is the HDR. So you can see that there's a little bit of, let me see if I can do a comparison view. All right, so now we're in comparison view. So the one on the left is the single exposure. This is one shot. That's what it looks like straight out of camera. This on the one on the right is the HDR after blending the 3 with the auto settings, and this is what it looks like. So you can already tell there's a little bit of saturation, but I mean, it looks about the same. And then you can see that the shadows in here are a little bit brighter, and then that up here, it's a little bit not as blown out on the white parts, but I mean, it's not really that noticeable. You can see the shadows are a little bit more defined on here, so that there's a little bit more detail that's being retained in these, but also like the windows aren't as dark, and just, yeah, so it's just the blending of the 3. Now for this, in the HDR image, if I wanted to edit that, I'll just hit my preset again, make this quick local adjustments. I'm just gonna hit auto just so you can see. This one actually, yeah, it did not do, it's not bad, but I didn't do a great job because you can tell up here with the lines that they're not straight. The horizontal isn't straight. So let me just, that looks okay. It feels a little bit off still, so I'll probably still use guided, but this is pretty much what it looks like. So this is what it looks like, HDR with the preset, and this is what it looked like at the end. So to compare the two of single shot and these two, so the one on the left is a single shot, the one on the right is the HDR. So the one on the right is a little bit brighter overall. I wonder if I wanted to just brighten this one a little bit more and see what that does. So it kind of balances out a little bit. So yeah, I mean, you can still tell there's a little bit of a difference. The one on the left, again, is a single exposure. One on the right is HDR, and they look pretty similar. The one on the left has got definitely a little bit more contrast in the image than the one on the right. So that's a style thing, but that's up to you. But that's kind of what I use HDR for. And I think it works out very, very well, especially for exteriors and the harsh sun and stuff like that. All right, and so that's pretty much it with everything. And so I know that for real estate, this is the kind of style that I do. This is what agents really like. They like everything to be as, you know, as bright and as even as possible, and then you can kind of see everything but still having some shadows. I mean, this is just like your standard real estate style that's popular right now that a lot of agents really like, and it really just showcases the home. And your eyes definitely have significantly more dynamic range than, you know, a camera does. So with doing this, I guess, is a little bit more true to what your eyes are going to be able to see and detect for your average day, you know, your average person. But yeah, but that's pretty much bracketing, in-camera bracketing, post. This is the image that you get. And sometimes, in some instances, you don't actually need to bracket, but I always do just to be safe for all of my exterior photos, because you never know when you may need it, and it's better to have it than to not. Okay, and that's it. That's basically the basics of bracketing, in-camera bracketing, so that you can bring it up in post and you can edit it, and you'll be able to see, and then you can see that the details that is retained in each by bracketing versus just a single exposure is a very, very big difference. There are some occasions where you can just take a single exposure and then you have enough dynamic range to play with to be able to get about the same result, but just to be safe, I would rather just bracket it and then have the options to pick if I need to, so that if I just have that single exposure, that's, you know, that medium properly exposed photo, if it's what I like and if I'm able to kind of play with the sliders and edit the photo the way that where it retains all the details and nothing's blown out, or the shadows aren't super grainy, then great. But if it's not, then I have the option to be able to bring those other shots in to kind of, you know, play and adjust the photo to my liking. So leave your questions in the comments. Let us know when you use HDR bracketing, or when you shoot brackets, or if you use it for any other scenario outside of just real estate and architecture. We'd love to know. Maybe you can share some tips that other people will benefit from. But thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.